And hello everybody, and welcome to another AgriRobot book launch. My name is Gemma Creffield. I'm the editorial and publicity coordinator for AgriRobot Books, and I'm here today with Ginger Smith, whose book The Rush'S Edge is out today. It is Ginger's debut book, and we're really excited to see it out in the world. So Ginger, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your book?
Sure. My name's Ginger Smith, as she said, of course. I've been writing. I've been a writer my whole life, pretty much. But this is the first thing I've had published, so I'm super excited about that. And the book is about a genetically engineered, technology implanted soldier who learns to cope with civilian life with the help of his crew, which are really like his family, and they salvage technology in the edge and the edge is the edge of the galaxy, and they find a mysterious artifact that downloads something into their ship, and it causes all kinds of chaos.
That's right, and that is where we will stop telling you about it, because you're going to find out what happens. So let's just dive into the questions then. Ginger, so where did you get your idea for this book? Where did it all start? Where did it come from?
Well, I have to thank my husband for a lot of it, because he pushed me to try to write something to try to publish, and I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work, but he finally gave me what I needed to push me over the edge and make me try to do it. And also the book was really inspired by all those space operas that I loved as a kid. I was a huge Star Wars fan, of course. Growing up in the 70s, I think most kids were. And a huge Star Trek fan. I would watch those two with my dad. And my dad also had like huge stacks of science fiction novels from the 60s and 70s, like pulp novels, like space opera at its best sometimes. And I read those as a kid, and so those were a huge influence to pick this genre to write about. And it also deals with some veteran issues, and that kind of came about because my dad was a Vietnam War veteran, and he struggled a little bit, coming back home after the war. And so I kind of used that and incorporated that into the book. And so it has a fun side, because I really wanted it to be as fun as it was as kids playing Star Wars out in the yard. But also I wanted it to be, to have a serious side as well and deal with some serious issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So is Hal's not based on your dad, though, is he?
No, he is not. I've always had such a great respect for veterans, and I don't know where Hal came from, really. I mean, the book started out to be about Ty, actually. I thought, here, I'm going to write this serious story about this veteran. He's very calm and, kind of an introspective guy. And Hal just stood up and said, no, this story is about me. You're going to make the story about me. And I actually shifted into the first chapter. I realized, hey, this is not Ty's story at all. And so, I don't know where Hal came from.
That's nice. His character, and then it just ended up being the Hal show, which is great. It's a great show.
Right.
But what I really love is and what a lot of the reviewers have loved is the relationship between Hal and Ty, and how that is already so strong in the beginning, but it also grows as the book grows. So was that going to be at the core of the story when you first started, or is that something that develops like Hal?
Yeah, I think I they're both so interesting. It just sort of, I guess it grew as the book grew. I knew that I wanted to have this soldier who was kind of this ex-soldier, this vet, who was kind of on the edge of everything, like all the time, like something could happen with him. And then we needed kind of the opposite side of that coin, kind of the steady presence. And I think really that's two sides of me, maybe. I mean, Hal is kind of the outsider and the kind of the person who doesn't fit everywhere. And that was kind of me growing up as a nerd, that kind of like symbolizes a little bit of how I felt. And then Ty is more of my teacher side, like being calm, being an observer of kids, or human interaction, like how they behave. And so I guess they are both sides of me, maybe.
Nice that you sort of have that personal development as you write. Okay, well, I think that would be a really great time if we could hear something from the book, if you're willing to share with us. I think you've got an extract prepared.
I do. This is from chapter 2, and so I have to do just a tiny setup for it. Hal and Ty have been on Jalith space station, and it's kind of a place that has some seedy areas and things like that. And they're in a bar, and they actually rescue a girl from being kidnapped. A young woman from being kidnapped, and she's been drugged, and kind of like a date drug, like trying to get you out of there. And they bring her back to their ship because they're not exactly sure what to do with her, and she's not quite conscious. And so they decided to kind of take care of her until she is up and around. And she wakes up alone. And so this is where this scene starts, from Vivi's point of view. All right. She had a headache, a bad one. Did Noah find me? The thought caused her to open one eye, expecting to see her small cube of a rented room, or worse, her hab unit with Noah. Instead, she saw a medical bay with metal floors and ceiling. Opening both eyes, she looked around. She was in a med bed covered with a blanket. She could feel the pull of medical sensors on her arm and collarbone. Her fingers began to work at them in growing panic. Where the hell am I? She breathed, yanking harder at the sticky pads of the sensors. She had a vague memory of 2 men grabbing her and pulling her somewhere she didn't want to go. Had she been taken prisoner? The room swam in her sight, and she squeezed her eyes tightly shut with a groan. You are on the low shod, Vivian Valjean. I am Runa, the ship's computerized assistant. Please do not try to get up. Her eyes opened wide. The calm, steady voice seemed to come from above her, where the ship's comms would be. If a ship's computer knew she was awake, it would be alerting someone right now. Yeah, well, sorry, don't take orders from computers. I give the orders. She removed the last sticky pad from her collarbone. I'm out of here. Miss Valjean, you are suffering the after effects of being drugged. No shit, really? Vivi slid from the bed, promptly falling on the floor. On her hands and knees, she found her boots and sat back to jam her feet into them. It took a moment to regain her balance, and the sudden vertigo made her cling to the med bed until the world stopped spinning. What the hell happened to me? She asked, slurring her words. Lifting her head, she saw her bag. Her data pad and ID were on the counter next to it. She shoved them into the backpack, grabbed it, and lurched toward the door. As she got there, it slid open, and she ran into a man standing on the other side. She staggered back, then tripped and fell to the ground. Whoa there, he said. You shouldn't be up yet. She looked up at him through a haze. He was attractive, with short, brownish blonde hair, gentle eyes, and a golden scruff on his face that softened his features. He knelt beside her, taking her arm gently. She could smell the clean scent of his soap. I need you to get back onto the bed, he said, helping her to a sitting position. I remember you, she said uncertainly. Was he the man who had grabbed her arm and tried to take her out of the bar? Or was he that blur of gray and black she'd seen fighting her would-be attacker? She wasn't sure. You were in the bar. Yeah, no need to be afraid. The man helped her to her feet. When she took a sliding step backwards to put space between them, he was careful not to touch her again. If you can just lie back down, we can talk. He gestured toward the bed. Even though it was the last thing she wanted to do, she felt nauseous, and lying down was probably a good idea. He followed her as she staggered her way to the bed and crawled up on it. Nobody's going to hurt you here, Miss Valjean. Who are you? She asked before laying back down. My name's Hal Cullen, he replied. Should I get our medic? She squeezed her eyes shut. No, I'm just kind of dizzy. That normal, Runa? Yes, Hal, the computer's even tone replied, but I am not currently getting a reading on our guest. Here, let me reattach the monitors, Hal murmured, turning her arm to place the sensor inside her elbow. He was careful with her, moving slowly so as not to startle her. Did you guys kidnap me? Phoebe asked, clutching her backpack to her with one arm. No, Hal looked up startled. He shook his head as he moved to slip off her boots and cover her with a warm blanket again. No, there were guys in the club who tried to snatch you, but I saw it and came after you. She began to remember the blonde man attacking the one who had yanked her up from the floor with a hand in her hair. Oh, right, Phoebe nodded, her eyes growing heavy again. I kind of recall seeing you fighting with someone. Yeah, you're safe now. Our medic said you probably need to sleep a little longer. But I'm not sleepy. She lay there, feeling both nervous around this total stranger and more exhausted than she'd ever been in her life. He took a seat beside the bed as she forced her eyes to stay open, wanting to keep an eye on him, but within moments she lost the battle. Okay.
Lovely. Thank you very much for reading that for us. So that was a part that included Vivi, who's only described very briefly on the back of the book, but she is a very, very important character throughout. And she is another one that grows and develops, much like Hal and Ty, and all of the characters' relationships really grow together. It's a real found family tale, which is really, really lovely to follow from start to finish.
That was one of the parts I liked as well.
Yeah. So I've just been sent a question. Were there any particular inspirations for how you portrayed the soldiers in the book, whether from books, films, TV shows? I know you already said that you were a Star Wars fan. Did you do a lot of research for the science and tech side of the story, or was it more from your imagination?
I guess a lot of it was from my imagination, but there were a couple of books I looked into for genetic engineering. One was called, I think it's Our Grandchildren Redesigned. I don't have it in front of me though, so I could be slightly different on the title, but it talks about genetic engineering and kind of what would happen in the future. So I did do a little bit of research into that. And like I said before, I think I said before, Sebastian Junger writes about, soldiers in war. And so I got some of my inspiration from there. But yeah, I mean, everything's an impact. I think when you're a big science fiction fan, I mean, you can't really separate the effect of the effects that things like Blade Runner have on you, or The Expanse, or just anything. It has such an effect, and I think everything's an inspiration.
Yeah, it just sort of all accumulates in your head, and you're not really sure where you've got bits of knowledge from, but they're there.
And then it just comes out, yeah. But on the VATS, I guess I kind of, I teach a lot of kids, and some of them, as we know, ADHD is an issue with a lot of children today. And I did give a thought when I was coming up with, the VATS and how they should be. I thought about those kids, and I thought, how could their energy and their abilities be a positive? How could you turn that into a positive? And so that was another inspiration source, I guess.
Sure, yeah, because you mentioned before you're an English teacher, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
In a lovely small town in Georgia. Working as a teacher, I'm assuming your students know about your book?
They do.
Yeah. Have they read any parts of it? Have you shared anything?
They have not. I know that I think our media specialist is planning on getting a copy for the library, so maybe they will read it. But they have not yet. But they do know about it, because as we move closer to a contract on the book, and I would get emails at school, and I'd be reading them at my lunch break, and then the day I found out from that Angry Robot was interested in the book was 1 minute before the end of my lunch period, and I read the email and I was like, oh my God. And then I had kids coming in, so I had to focus, but they do know about it, and they've been really excited, so that's been great.
That's great. So let's take another question from the audience. So back to Hal. Hal is a sort of disposable human trained and engineered for war, then tossed out when he's no longer useful. Do you see parallels for how the US treats its soldiers, or has treated them in the past? I know you said that you drew a lot of inspiration from vets. Do you feel like they get treated the same way?
Probably not as severe. I mean, but I know that some must have that experience and feel as if, no one cares and no one's supportive. I think we probably need to do a lot more for soldiers who come back from combat. As I keep quoting Sebastian Younger, but he speaks just so movingly in TED Talks and in his articles about the struggle of soldiers coming back to our lonely society, because they come from a place where they eat together. They're together all the time. They're training together. They're always together. And then they come back to this society where everyone's separate, and it's a real harsh change for a lot of them, and they don't adapt well. So there's definitely room for improvement.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why the found family element is so strong in this book, because you feel like that's what Hal needed, that's what Tice needed.
It is. I mean, it's almost like Hal needs Tice as much as Tice needs Hal. Without soldiers to look after, because Tice was a upper officer. He without soldiers to look after, I think he would be kind of at a loss. And Hal the same way needs someone to steer him in the right direction. And I think his respect for Ty is so strong that it works for him. It keeps him from burning out somewhere and fighting in some of the back clubs where they fight for money or fight to the death. And Hal's been kind of kept from that by Ty. And if Ty says something, Hal's right there like, yes, boss. So I think they help each other.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Hal, are you looking at continuing his story into perhaps a sequel, or are you expanding the story in other ways? What are your plans for it?
I do have a sequel in the works. I made kind of a rookie mistake and wrote the sequel before we edited the first book, so there's some changes that have to be made, and it was a lesson learned. Don't do that until you make the edits. But it's probably at least halfway, if not 3/4 the way, rewritten. So hopefully people want to hear more about Hal and Ty and Vivi, and Hal's journey as a hero is not done yet. So I think he's got more development to do, and there's a lot more of the story to tell. And the world is so large that I think that there's so many more stories to tell that may even not have to do with Hal and Ty and Vivi, but they've definitely got more to their story, I think. And I've got a few short stories as well, which I'm kind of looking for a home for. So I'm hanging on to those for now, but I hope I find somewhere to put those. And who knows, there may be more short stories to come.
Nice, very exciting.
And I do have an idea for a prequel as well, but it's just in like just basic ideas. Yeah, I'm not I haven't written anything on it yet.
Great. So somebody's asked, one of the things I loved about the book was how human the super soldier was. Hal pays for his abilities every time he uses them. He has episodes, etc. What made you veer away from the usual indestructible superhuman hero?
I think heroes are at their best when, all heroes have to have a, flaw to be a well-rounded character. And I think, and I don't think they're as interesting. I love comic books, obviously, and superheroes. But to me, like, for example, Batman is a much more interesting hero to me because of his angst and his internal conflict than Superman. I mean, Superman's great, love him, but I like that internal conflict and someone struggling with their darker side, or struggling, because of different things. I find that interesting. So, yeah.
Well, struggling with the power that he has, in a way.
Right. And I think the thing is, he's so quick to jump in for his friends and his family, his found family, that he doesn't even think about the cost of what it could be to him, because that's what he's made to do. He's been programmed to care for, to watch out for the gnats in his care that, that he's with. That's his unit, that's his crew, his team, and he'd do anything for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I'm looking behind you. You're saying about comics and all of the lovely, glorious toys and bits and pieces you've got behind you.
Right.
You've also been showing off on Twitter some of your amazing toy collection with the tiny little Rush's Edge book.
Right.
And I know you've had some short stories that you might be looking to place. Are they possibly within some other worlds, some fan fiction maybe, or anything like that?
Well, actually, let's see. The stories I have now are based on the Rush's Edge, and the the characters, some auxiliary characters. If you read the book, there are these two bats named Lane and Orin, and I've got kind of a story that includes them. And then I have a story about Hal when he was in the bat school as a young, as a young rook, and he's like learning the ropes. But I've also, I may or may not have written some Star Wars fan fiction back in the day, and for Star Wars Rebels. So if I ever got the chance to write for Star Wars, to write anything, that would be great.
So Star Wars is way up there then.
Yes, for sure. My favorite fandom. And I just, they did some great stuff with the characters on Star Wars Rebels, and I just found it such an interesting show that I had written a few fanfics for that, maybe. But yeah, so that's been a big interest of mine. So I've really been writing a long time. I'm so glad to have something that's mine. It's great to write in a different fandom, but I don't know. I'm just so proud of this one as well.
Sci-fi films and fandoms and different TV shows. Have you ever thought about of seeing the Rush's Edge on screen? Maybe who could portray the characters? Have you got any ideas about that sort of thing?
Actually, I have. I thought maybe this might be a question. I just watched The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, and I don't know if anybody's seen that, but I think her name's Anya Taylor-Joy would be a great Vivi. If not her, then maybe Julia Garner from Ozark. She's got the perfect hair for it. And so, and she's such a great. She's got she's just spunky and just has a lot of character, and I think she would be really good. For Hal, somebody like Alexander Ludwig from Vikings, he's definitely got the look that I see Hal having. And I've really enjoyed his work on that show. And for Ty, maybe someone like Tom Cullen from Nightfall, if anybody's familiar with him. He's been really, really, we've enjoyed watching that show too. And so I think they might be a good cast, a good cast.
You said you thought about it a little bit. That sounds like you thought about it quite a lot.
Well, I heard that this question might be a big one. So that someone might ask, and so I kind of brainstormed and thought I know exactly which people. But I gotta say the Queen's Gambit was awesome, and Anya Taylor-Joy was amazing in that. She would be a great Phoebe. That was all I could think of as I was watching it.
Who do you think might direct it? Would you see it as a film or as a TV series?
I think it could go either way. I think it could work either way, but I think it would work great as a TV show as well as a film. In the film they might have to leave some things out. In a TV show they could explore more of the edge, which might be interesting. So I would be good with either one.
Great. Cool. Well, I would very much like to see it in either format because I think it would be great. And I think, we've got another question. It sounds like lots of people have particularly enjoyed the way you portray the relationships in The Rush'S Edge, which is one of the things that I definitely connected to when I read it in submissions. Which relationship was your most favorite to develop? Because there's quite a few going on.
Wow, that's so hard. I guess I guess Hal and Ty were Hal and Ty, and then Hal and Vivi. I mean, I think the Hal and Vivi work, their relationship works so well, and romance is in the book, but it's not like a major part of the book. Well, it is, but it isn't. You know, it's not I wouldn't say it's a romance story. You know, but I think as Hal realizes what it means to be human and what it means to he never thought like love would be in the cards for him, a relationship. And so when that happens to him, he's just kind of baffled in a way, like he doesn't really know what steps to take. And Vivi's kind of in control of that, and I think that's a good dynamic for them, because growing up, that's when they grow up, are born at like a physical, I mean, they're the size of a 12-year-old, but they've only really been grown for like 4 years, and then they're born the size of a 12-year-old and they're trained virtually and all that. But Hal's just not been, and he lived at the VAP facility until he became a soldier. And then he and Ty got the Rush'd, which is their ship. And he just never has had like the real experiences of life. So she's kind of helping him out through that. Kind of the way, I mean, and Ty's the same way. I guess if I had to pick my favorite, I might say Ty and Hal. I think they just get to my heart somehow. The two of them are such great friends, and Ty really understands Hal. Number one, because he's learned about that with his job as a captain in the ACAS, and number two, he's just such a good observer of people, and I think he really knows how to put himself in someone else's shoes. And I don't know, I just think their friendship is really beautiful. It's a good thing.
Yeah, that is really lovely. That was what I enjoyed most, was reading about a really strong, possibly unconventional relationship, but I definitely thought it was one of the strongest parts about the book.
Thanks.
Oh, and then we've had another question come through. Everybody, I think, asks this quite a lot, but how did you find the time to write a book whilst working a day job? Because I imagine that is incredibly difficult. Like, I know I'm exhausted by the end of the day. So how did you find the time to do it? How did you go about doing it?
Well, every day, I guess I just made it a point to write every day. I have a friend named Arnie Law, who's a best friend that we used to game with a lot, tabletop, role playing. And he's an artist, and he said one year, hey, I'm gonna create an artwork a day for a year. And when I read that on Facebook and heard him say that, I thought, well, if he can do an artwork a day, I can write every day. I could find some time to do that. So I really made I made a plan to do that every day. And after about a couple of weeks, I feel weird if I don't write during the day, like at night. Like, so I get home at night from work and, make dinner and all that. But then afterwards I write until I go to bed. I might be writing near the TV. I might be writing, before I go to sleep at night. But I'm always working on it. So I steady worked on it every day. Even if I only got to write for 10 minutes, I did it every day. And that was really a key. And now I do it automatically. It's not like, oh, I got to sit down and write. It's like, okay, I got a few minutes. Let me get some words down,
So how much do you average out per day, do you think?
Oh, gosh. It depends on what I'm writing. I'm kind of like I edit as I go, but then I go back and edit some more, and then I rewrite and edit some more. But like I'll take two steps forward and one step back, to edit. So it varies, but I wrote The Rush'S Edge in about 3 months. So it came really quick. I don't know, the story just came out. And then I spent 2 months going back over it and fixing things, and because it wasn't perfect. But at that point, and I got it as good as I could get it, before May, when I submitted for the open submission period for Angry Robot. And, I had tried a few different agents and things, and you always get those rejections before the acceptances come. And so, I said, hey, I don't have anything to lose, So it was about a 5-month process to get it ready. The second one didn't come quite that quick, but it did. It was, yeah.
That
You
is
know, if
great
you do
work.
it every day, you make a lot of progress.
Do it every day. Every day. Well, thanks so much for chatting to us, Ginger. It's been really lovely delving into the Rush's Edge and learning a bit more about you and your processes and everything. So thanks so much for taking the time to do that. And thank you, everybody, for watching. It's been lovely having your questions come in, and I really hope that you pick up and enjoy The Rush's Edge. It is out now, available everywhere, so please go buy it. I know we're in the UK anyway, in the lockdown situ, but you can get it from Amazon, so, or your favorite independent bookshop, in which case we will send you a free ebook version if you send us the receipt. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.